Before we get into today's episode, take a look at your screen right now, because there is some amazing which are happening right now. If you're an impact investor or working in corporate venture, specifically in sustainability or climate, I want to flag something for you. Happening just before the famous Tomorrowland Festival on July 23rd in Belgium, we're curating the investor program for Love Tomorrow. And there's a separate program at the Impact Circles Investor Lounge on Friday the 24th. It's curated, it's intimate, conversations between impact fund managers, climate LPs, and corporate venture leads. We are hosting the program. If that sounds like a room that you want to be in, I suggest you go to the show notes.
Security can no longer be an afterthought. In the past, people would go build something and then say, oh, let me think about the security piece. I think right now it's one of those components that you have to take into account from the get-go. The later you try to address it, the more stuff you will have to fix.
Security is now a concern to everyone, because up until now, if you were building a startup that is not from the security space, you would typically not worry about security before probably a few years. You would worry about scaling the business, etc., etc. But now, because the bar is actually so low from an economic perspective, like it's fairly easy to attack virtually any organization that you want. But the issue is attackers never follow the exact same path again. And so that meant that you had to constantly update the playbooks or accept very little automation results, like meaningful results coming out of them. And our first idea was, if we switch this logic of having a static playbook to having a dynamic AI that is able to run actions by itself. What matters the most is probably the false negative rate, because that's really the one that harms you. That means that something has happened but has gone completely undetected until it's maybe too late.
And I think if you have the attitude of thinking that you're absolutely impenetrable, then you're going to suffer.
AI has made it trivially easy to be a bad actor. You don't need to know anything about security anymore. You don't even need to write your own malware. You don't even need to know how to phish. The tools are there and they scale infinitely. The question every CISO or CTO, every founder running infrastructure is asking right now is, what do you do on the other side? Ahmed Achchak and Hamza Sayeh asked that question in 2023. As machine learning engineers, not as security people. They built Qevlar, an AI that investigates and responds to security incidents for some of the largest enterprises in Europe. Réza Malekzadeh from Partech co-led the $30 million round in March. Today's conversation is the one we set up in the prep call, how AI is changing the threat landscape and what to do about it.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
First and foremost, Ahmed, did I get some of this correct when I described your founding story and what you're doing?
Yeah, you definitely have. You put it in a much shorter way than I usually do. But that's exactly it. I mean, when we created Qevlar with Hamza back in 2023, we just noticed that AI was already everywhere in security, but it was mostly used on the detection side, embedded within malware detectors like antivirus, what we call EDRs, etc. And we thought that the weak link was precisely the operational side, because you now have a lot of detection tools, you have a lot of alerts that are raised as a consequence to this, but you have a bit of an issue with the capability of security operations to deal with that. You have many signals and you just are not able to investigate all of them. And we thought that we could have a role in this. And then you're absolutely right. AI is now being widely used on the attacker side. We've all read, sometimes maybe read a bit too much about Mythos and about GPT 5.5, etc. But this is just a world we are about to start living in, one where AI has a great role both in offensive and defensive security. And yeah, we're glad to be part of that.
And Réza, I didn't give much background on you, but you're quite the security buff. Maybe you can talk a bit about your own background in this context, and then we can dive into the bigger conversation about the AI shift that's happening in security right now.
Sure. Thank you, Andreas. Well, before turning on the dark side and becoming an investor, I actually spent some time working for a variety of tech companies, and particularly at Cisco in the security technology group, where back then I worked on an initiative called Network Admission Control, which was a new way for Cisco to kind of look at devices as they were accessing the network. We were already going through some changes in the industry, and there was a lot of innovation happening in the security field, and I was lucky enough to be part of that at Cisco.
Yeah, and Réza, you've spent, as you just said, 20 years in this space. You've watched the cloud rewrite how the category was shaped once. Now you're seeing AI do the same thing. Some say that this is a second opportunity for massive disruption for those that are doing harmful things, but there's also, of course, an opportunity for people like Ahmed. Can you talk a bit about this shift, what you saw back then, and then what you're seeing now?
I think security is super exciting space because it all keeps changing very, very dramatically each time we have another technology shift. So many years ago, people used to have all of their applications on their own servers in their basement. And it was quite easy to protect at that point. You would put a big, Cisco firewall in front of your network, and you were able to filter pretty much everything coming in your network, and everything was running locally. And then the cloud came and you started putting your applications elsewhere on other people's infrastructure. And then you actually started using components or libraries or pieces of technology from third parties to build your own app. And then you relied on other people to provide services and applications to you. And so that was the first major shift where that traditional approach to security could no longer work. You could no longer put a big piece of protection, in your basement and be all done with it. Today, we're seeing a second major shift where AI is just dramatically changing the way people can approach technology and, good guys like bad guys. And typically the bad guys are always on the lookout for disruption because they can start and come hurt you in a way that you had not predicted in the past. And so AI is helping bad guys automate attacks, find new threats, find new holes in your environment. And so it's just making it much, much easier for the bad guys to try and hurt you. And if on the defense side, you're not using it, then you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. So I think it's a great opportunities for people like Ahmed and his team to come and deliver something disruptive and something truly useful for the market out there.
Let me ask you one really quick question before we go over to Ahmed. Is this an opportunity or a threat for only the enterprise level, or is it something that even us smaller business owners need to start thinking about?
I think it's an opportunity for everyone to think about, because even a small business owner is going to be attacked today. One of the things that AI makes easy is attack everyone, or as many people as you want. And then it's a math game of, the law of great numbers. If I attack a gazillion people and I can actually, hurt a few, I'm going to make what I want as an attacker. So why would I limit myself? It used to be complicated to attack because you had to use tools by hand. So you would only go after the big fish. But today you can go after everyone. I mean, even my kids get so many phishing emails every day. It's just scary.
I actually cannot agree more with Réza. If anything, I think the increase of risk is probably higher on the small and medium businesses than it is on the enterprise accounts, because enterprises have already been under attacks, heavy attacks for quite some time, precisely because of what Réza said. These are the large fishes, the large whales that everyone has been trying to harm. But now you have a technology that makes it economically much easier to do harm at scale. And so obviously, I think that the increase of risk, as I said, is probably stronger on the SMB side.
Ahmed, I want to pull on a thread here because you came from ML, not security. So machine learning and AI was very much close to your heart, but then we saw this shift happen. I'd love to ask you, what did you see that the security industry hadn't seen because of your AI background?
That's a good question. I think that, I don't know whether it's the AI background that helped us on that specific answer that I'm about to give, but I think that not coming from security just helped us dare to do things differently. I'll explain what I mean by this. If you look at 2023, that's the year where Qevlar got started. At the time, the term AI SOC didn't even exist. Like, no one knew what that was. And the way security operations centers used to deal with attacks, with incidents, was either through completely manual operations, like humans looking at that, running investigations by themselves, pivoting from a tool to another until they have enough data to conclude that something is happening or that this is a case we can dismiss, or they had what we call playbooks in tools called SOARs that are responsible precisely for automation. But the issue with these playbooks is that, at least back then, they were completely static, which means that you had to build a bunch of if then else rules nested together, and then you had a robot that would basically do whatever you told it to. But the issue is attackers never follow the exact same path again. And so that meant that you had to constantly update the playbooks or accept very little automation results, like meaningful results coming out of them. And when we started, we thought that that just sounded too old-fashioned. You said something, Andreas, earlier, which is trying to balance the field a little bit between attackers and defenders, and it just seemed that attackers were favored a lot by this way of doing things. And we thought that we could dramatically change it. And our first idea was, okay, what if we switch this logic of having a static playbook to having a dynamic AI that is able to run actions by itself? And again, at the time, this word agentic wasn't even a thing yet. We needed few marketers to work on it to create it, but we had this idea of an AI that is able to sequentially draw actions that mimic human behavior, and that makes it much faster, much more scalable to deal with incidents. And so, coming back to your original question, I think that not coming from security gave us maybe the trust, maybe beginner's mistakes, if you want, but sometimes these mistakes turn out to be good ideas, and that's really what gave us the idea for Qevlar.
Yeah. Reza, I want to ask you about this because, of course, underdogs is something that we in the industry tend to really like, underdogs that come from another industry and try and disrupt an established one. It, of course, is what we've seen multiple times happen. We've seen it with Mark Zuckerberg, with Facebook, that ended up completely disrupting media. Media was completely oblivious to that. And we've seen it as well with Airbnb, where the hotel chain said this is never going to happen, but then it did. And we've seen it again and again. Can you share a bit about how you as a VC think when you see a team that's coming from outside of an established industry and saying we can disrupt it, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, what it makes you think and hesitate or double down on?
Look, I actually think it's pretty interesting, because when you've been used to doing something, then your ability to go out of it is actually limited. Time and again, there are all these examples of why you're doing it like this. Well, because we've always done it like this. And I think that if you come from a different environment, and of course, you're super smart like these guys are, and you're super hardworking, then you can actually think of it and do it a different way. You know, historically, we had another example in a completely different industry of Alan, who is a healthcare provider in France. And the two founders came from a totally different environment. And they thought, hey, let's go disrupt this thing. And they started by building a mobile app. And of course, all the traditional healthcare providers in France laughed at them, but they don't anymore because of, you know, the fact that their new approach brought such an ease of use that they're now killing it and really winning massive markets. And I think that's the interesting thing, is if you come from somewhere else, you're going to think about things differently. You're going to be able to not be stuck in the same, you know, thought processes that others have been. And you can then, if you're really good, bring something innovative enough and something disruptive enough that it becomes super interesting.
Yeah, in a way, it's easier to think out of the box when you don't have a box at all to start from. So that's basically what summarizes the stage we were in back then. So you just learn from first principles. We learned from speaking with SOC analysts. We literally reached out to people on LinkedIn, and we spoke with whoever wanted to speak to us. And that included some of the largest organizations on earth. We were ourselves surprised with this, but it also gave us the trust that whatever we were building was interesting to these folks, and that it was worth our times, worth a bit of sleepless nights. So yeah, that's, I think, the advantage, if you want, that we had back then.
Ahmed, I want to ask you, because you described Qevlar as essentially putting an AI on the defensive side to fight the AI on the offensive side. I'd love to just walk through what that really looks like, not at the product level, but at the threat level. So we have on the one side an AI attacker that's doing what they need to do to get into your machine, but what does Qevlar do in response?
That's a good question. I mean, again, when you think about AI on the attacker side, you should think about it as trying to create multiple holes in your organization, right? Like whoever the organization, you have attackers that want to get in for multiple reasons. And so you have different doors that you can use. You have the email security one. Réza mentioned phishing. That's a classic one. It's still very effective. And if anything, generative AI is making it easier to build very effective scalable phishing campaigns. But you also have the classic malware route, you have the network, etc., etc. So basically what happens is you have security operation centers, which are basically teams of people that are responsible for triaging these signals, because you basically have tons of signals, but you have no idea on which one are really malicious, which ones are not. And so what AI on the offensive side does, is that it makes it A, easier to do this, B, it means that you really have to react extremely fast. So even the time to react is something that a lot of organizations now want to bring down. That's where AI on the defensive side comes to play, because it allows you to deal with all the signals. It allows you to do that much faster than relying on humans. Humans still play a key role in our product, in the sense that they are the ones that know the context about the organizations. They are the ones that knows, for example, that, I don't know, something true for Bank of America is less true for BNP Paribas. Still, these are two similar organizations in a sense, the same industry, but completely different realities, completely different histories. So you still need humans, and humans do bring a lot of value to the table. But thanks to our product, they're not dealing with incidents anymore. They're dealing with facts. We come to them saying, we know that this is not a thesis. This is a real attack, and here is the pattern that we have seen. Up to you now. Do you want me to run remediation? Do you want me? Here's the suggested remediation that Qevlar would have run. Up to you. Do you want me to do it? Do you want to do it by yourself? Do you want to reconfirm everything? Here is the audit trail of the investigation. So here are all the steps that we have run, all the tools that we have connected to, all the raw data, plus the interpretation from Qevlar that led us to believe that this is a malicious case. And so it's a complete game changer in the sense that you're not doing it by yourself. The heavy load is taken away by the AI, and it comes back to you with the results of the investigation. And a good thing we are noticing more and more is our customers now entrust the product so much that they're asking for, if not autonomous, at least automated remediation as part of that. Meaning that they know that our accuracy level, whenever Qevlar says something is malicious or is not, are probably higher than their own SOC. So now they really start to entrust us with decision making beyond the investigation side. And so that's where it gets really interesting, because now we can close the loop much faster. Again, think that AI on the offensive side, if you were to reduce it to one major impact, that's the need for a much faster reaction. And so now what we are noticing is customers trust us on the investigation side. And so they're asking for, as I said, automated response to make sure that in a couple of minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, not only is the investigation done, not only is the culprit detected, but also we have taken remediation actions, we have changed something in the system to harden it and make it even better for the next time. And so that's really what we're heading for. We do not want ourselves to be triage agents. We want ourselves to contribute to making the security posture of the organizations we help protect, making it much better. And that's the idea of a self-healing security posture, if you want. We get breached, or at least we get an attack, we automatically adjust something, and the AI can definitely help on this.
And to those that thought they heard a baby just before, you did. We have a security breach on Ahmed's side, but that's being taken care of in the background. Now, I want to ask both of you, because what you're describing is a bit that the whole fortress model of security is that you have to accept that you cannot keep attackers out anymore. You have to assume that there is a breach or it's going to happen no matter what. What you now need to do is detect it and react as fast as possible. I want to ask both of you, is this already industry standard belief, or is that something that you're still working with clients and other people, you, Réza, on your side, with other founders to understand and see that this is where security is moving?
I don't think it's universally accepted yet, because you always have this issue of, oh, not to me, others maybe. But the reality is that it's true. Like, you really have to assume that nothing can be absolutely perfect. You can lock all the doors, they can get in through the window or the ventilation system or some other place. And I think if you have the attitude of thinking that you're absolutely impenetrable, then you're going to suffer. But if you do accept the fact that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, then you're going to put in place the right things, knowing that at some point, someone's going to click on that phishing email. At some point, something's going to go through that other, defense system. And therefore, you can have prepared for minimal, basically, cost to you by being prepared for detecting it, reacting to that, having trained people in advance. So I think that should be the ideal mindset for people. And the more attacks are actually put in the press, the more people are starting to take note of that and understanding that that's the new reality. But it's not perfectly universal yet.
We have a slight bias here because we only work with enterprise accounts, right? Or large MSSPs. And when I speak with CISOs there, they clearly have understood it to be the case. The vast majority of them now know that, again, as you said, Andreas, this fortress model does not work anymore, does not stand, and that you should basically assume breach. And if anything, the new waves of AI publications on the security side, and by this I mean clearly Claude Mythos and GPT 5.5, that's more on the vulnerability side of things. But if anything, it's showing that even on the vulnerability side, you just cannot catch up. You have millions. If you're an organization like, I don't know, a car manufacturer or a bank, you probably have millions of vulnerabilities everywhere. So you just need to know, you need to assume that these are all tools that an attacker can use. So the question becomes, okay, I cannot patch all of them. What do I do now? And that's where this role of AI being a sentinel, someone who constantly controls your shores, making sure that as soon as someone gets in, we're able to take them out. That's a model that probably summarizes better what the future of security would look like, yes.
One thing with AI is, of course, that once you allow it to make decisions and become agentic, you're also assuming a bit of risk there. And I'd love to ask you, how do you govern that risk, and how much is yours versus the client's? Is it you who's the responsible party, or is it the CISO who bought the product?
That's a complex one. The way we deal with it is, first of all, we obviously try to increase as much as possible the accuracy rate of the tool, right? Like making sure that whenever it says something is not harmful, is benign, we'd better be absolutely certain about that. I'm citing this example in particular because everyone talks about false positives in security. But actually what matters the most is probably the false negative rate, because that's really the one that harms you. That means that something has happened but has gone completely undetected until it's maybe too late. And so clearly we have a bias towards making our AI as conservative as possible, meaning that it never says this is not dangerous unless it has checked every single possible case, unless it has checked every possible tool it has at its disposal. It even knows when to raise its hand and to say, here, I don't think anything is happening, but because I didn't have access to the logs from system A and system B that I think would have been helpful for me, I will not conclude. Up to you to review it, up to you to add context, etc. And so the reason is we really want to take this false negative rate as close to zero as possible, because that's the one that destroys trust with our customers. So essentially what I'm saying here is the way we have designed the product, and we have a lot of graph AI, for example, that goes into it. It's not just an LLM that runs everything. We have designed it in a way to make sure that the false negative rate in particular is as close to zero as feasible. But actually we go beyond this. Basically, when it comes to remediation, giving the customer the ability to choose if they want to go with our remediation or not. So for now, we're just suggesting it. They're not obliged to follow it. And the reason I mentioned automated rather than autonomous remediation, there is a slight nuance, which is that the agent is not able to run remediation by themselves. You can put guardrails. You can say, for example, if it's a matter of resetting the password of a user on Sunday at 3 a.m., you can do it, because the consequences of these actions are relatively limited. At the opposite, if it is like reimaging a payment server, well, leave that to us. Just raise your hand, let us know on Slack or Teams or whatever that something maybe is happening, and then do not run any remediation. So what I'm trying to say is certain remediation actions carry a much higher business operational risk for the organization than others. And so obviously it's up to the CISO, it's up to the security team there to decide what risk structure they want to go with. But essentially the tool we are building is one that gives you the control. You have the investigation capabilities that are native to Qevlar, but then you can bring remediation capabilities on our own platform on top of that. And you can use guardrails around them to say, these are allowed or these are not. They need to await for human validation, for example, or something like that. That's how we try to bridge it. And what I've said for remediation is actually true for another aspect of what we call closing the loop. And that's actually dealing with tuning the security systems of our customers. What I mean by that is detection is a matter of correlation rules most of the time. Like you have rules that say if behavior A and behavior B are happen together, then raise an alarm because maybe something is happening. But more and more so, because of the data that we generate on the investigation side, we can tweak these rules. And so same thing applies here. We are not changing the rules by ourselves. We are making suggestions to customers by saying, hey guys, here there is a pattern. If we change this rule, we could have detected, for example, the attack a bit sooner, and we could have had more time to react to it. We suggest that you do it. And they remain in control. They still get to decide about what happens. So essentially, to summarize all of that, we try not to be a black box. We try to drive confidence up by explaining every step that goes into the thinking of Qevlar, but we do not force any action unless customers agree to it, basically.
I'd love to ask both of you a bit about the commercial side, the go-to-market side of this type of business, because it's obviously very important that you don't get stuff wrong. And your partners, your clients are major corporates across the world. How do you, as a 3-year-old startup, manage to bring on board these massive clients in such an important space as security? And Réza, maybe you can afterwards talk a bit about the broader reflections on how you, as a young startup, enter into a market where it's notoriously difficult to get trust built with these large enterprises.
It definitely is, but surprisingly, if you do it the right way, it's almost easy. I'll explain what I mean by this. You have a lot of fluffy promises in this space. From my perspective, at least, it does hurt the space as a whole, because you have a lot of folks that will come at you saying, hey, my AI is perfect. It can do everything. I'm a 6-month-old startup, but still, I can do everything. Or, by the way, same applies for incumbents. Like incumbents go for same strategies sometimes. They just heard about AI, so all of a sudden they all have perfect AI agents that are able to do everything. We have gone with a different strategy, which is to come to customers, to come to prospects rather, and to say, hey folks, we're good at that, we're very bad at this, but we want to bridge it, and we want to improve, we want to get better. Do you want to see the product that we have right now? So by design, we had much more of an engineer mindset, trying to crack a problem rather than a go-to-market approach. And it turned out that was rather efficient. And so, for example, when we would talk to a CISO, our first reaction would be, hey, do not trust anything we're saying. You will get to test it by yourself. Because again, trust is not something that you win by showing slides. Trust is something that you win by demonstrating it, by demonstrating that your product does what you said, that beyond the product, the team behaves the way that you said. I'll give you an example. Part of our team was yesterday in Germany with one of our customers there, one of the largest electronics resellers in Europe, if not the largest. One of the things that came out was they were actually comparing us to much larger vendors in the space, and they were like, guys, we became customers. We still get the same care from you guys. And again, that sounds irrelevant to most of the folks. It's not to us, because to us, this is one other aspect of trust. Trust is baked into the product, but it's also baked into the teams building it. And that's really the strategy that we have gone with. So it's fairly simple. It's just a true, honest one of saying, hey guys, test it. This is something we do well. This is something that's part of our roadmap. Do you want to be part of that? And surprisingly, obviously sometimes you have people that come at you saying, hey, no, I will go with Microsoft whenever they have that in 5 years. But you have others that feel that they have an urgent need for it right now, and that they want to trust a small team, at least give them their chance. And that's all we've been asking about. Just test it, have a look at it. If you like it, we're more than happy to collaborate together, obviously. If you don't, well, for us, that helped us already, because we gather feedback through that experience. And that has been our go-to-market philosophy, if you want.
Réza, does this align with how you're thinking about how you've seen young startups build credibility with larger customers?
Yes, absolutely. It's a journey, right? So it's not once you have found a magical thing that everything happens. It's absolutely a journey. And it's a lot about, saying what you're going to do and doing what you said you were going to do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's super important. And this is a space where it's moving so fast and the threat and the cost are so high that you cannot afford to just sit and wait. And so I think that progressive companies are going to work with startups. And if a startup can come and prove that they're good at what they're doing and make it easy for the product to be tested, then there's no reason for them not to trust them. There are markets where people are more or less progressive, more or less inclined to working with startups. And one of the nice things with this team is that they've gone international very quickly. And so they're not just sitting and waiting for the market around them to come to them. But it's very general, right? The best startups have been super aggressive about go-to-market. I think this saying of build it and they will come doesn't really exist in this world. Absolutely not. And you have to be super aggressive because fundamentally, execution is the most important thing.
Yeah. Now I want to go to the European philosophy here, or your thesis on Europe, Réza, because you've made security investments in Israel, Italy, and now France as well. You have a very specific thesis on why European cyber will be successful and how we're positioned in this current moment. Can you talk a bit about that and lay out that thesis, and then we can dive deeper together?
I think, cyber relies a lot on very deep engineering talent. And I think we have amazing talent. We have very good education systems throughout Europe. We have great engineers, people who can really think through complex problems and build great solutions. And even if you look at some of the larger tech companies in the world, they have massive R&D centers in Paris or elsewhere across Europe. And I think that this new generation of entrepreneurs has completely understood the importance of go-to-market on top of it. Like they're not just building, in a research lab, and they are building a product for the real world, right? No one buys technology. People buy a product. They buy an answer to a pain point. And that's exactly what these guys are doing. And so I think this new, very go-to-market focused, I would say, brain movement or brain position or attitude of this new generation of entrepreneurs make it such that this great technology can be very successful in the market. And we're seeing it with more and more cyber companies out of Europe.
You mentioned last time we spoke the Vade story and how Vade merged with Hornet Security, which was acquired by Proofpoint for $1.6 billion. Can you maybe dive into that case study a little bit about what changed in the company between the founding and the exit? And the story, of course, has for Europe, as you said, for a long time been that we have great tech, but we don't have great go-to-market. But that's changing now, or rather it has changed now.
Sure. So look, Vade was a French cybersecurity company, developed a great product around anti-phishing, started selling it and went and sold it internationally from the beginning. Actually, the VP of sales was not based in France. She was based in Israel, was very international mindset, and they were able to have a great presence in other markets. They realized that they could be very complementary to a German company called Hornet Security, and they decided to merge so that the entity would be much greater, with a much greater market presence and more reach out in the market. And it made them a huge player at once. And I think that completely turned the tables. And so this ability to think about growing the business inorganically, it was also a great way for them to get to a size where, well, Proofpoint acquired them, and it was a great successful exit for all those involved. And the company continues to operate. They're a huge business unit as part of Proofpoint. And so I think that's a very nice testament to the go-to-market success in Europe.
Ahmed, could you comment on what we just heard from Réza here? Is there a real European advantage when it comes to defensive security specifically? Like some would say data sovereignty, GDPR, the way large enterprises think about infrastructure here. Do you think that this all makes sense and converges to become a real advantage for us?
I think it does to a certain extent. I'll give you an example. Having started out of Europe, GDPR is a thing. And so, for example, I've mentioned throughout the conversation how easy it is to control what the AI is doing. I do believe that this is something that we have in the product from day one, because we're probably a bit more conscious about AI and about data and what goes into what and how do you control this, etc. So I'm not talking about GDPR on the law side, on the legal side. I'm talking about the consequences that it means for engineers, because you basically hear about these kind of things all the time. So that means that whenever you think about a product, you have a bit more chances of thinking about making it transparent, explaining what data, making sure that the customer remains in control. For example, when you go to Qevlar, you have the integration center, and within the integration center, you can literally say, I allow Qevlar to use that piece of my data set. I allow it to connect to my SIM, and within the SIM, only query these tables. And again, this is something that we have baked into the product from day one. I think because of this data consciousness that is probably higher in Europe than it is anywhere else across the globe. So I think that, yes, this gives a slight advantage to people thinking about security product for Europe from Europe. I think obviously there are geopolitical tensions right now. I mean, it's not a surprise to anyone, and that probably helps a little bit European companies in Europe. That's not, for example, the card that we play. Like we don't play the sovereign card in our case. We do believe that, if anything, Europe deserves to have champions that can sit at the tables of the big tech companies, and to achieve that, if these companies, from a go-to-market perspective, only focus on Europe and sell a European product first, my fear is the market is not big enough. And so I'm not saying that the European market is small. What I'm saying is, to really have champions, you need to have companies that are able to play global plays. And we have good examples of that. We have a lot of successful companies in Europe recently on the AI space in particular, thinking about Legora, thinking about Lovable, etc., that are clearly going for a global play. And that's something that we're trying to copy as well. So we do have very happy customers in the US. We do invest a lot on our go-to-market in the United States, and we will continue to do so. We are thinking about Asia now because it's becoming interesting for us. And precisely, we do not want to just serve Europe with a purely European mindset. We have to think global because the pain is global. And again, the market is there. So the winners will be the ones that just dare to reimagine the space, dare to be hungrier maybe than others, and dare to just move fast. And we're trying to do that as much as we can.
So if we stay on that thread for a bit, you're 3 years old, you're 30 million in, with some of the most demanding enterprise logos on your books. What has to be true for the next 3 years for Qevlar to be the obvious answer to the AI landscape problem?
That's a question I ask myself a lot, and I kind of gave an early answer to it a few minutes ago, and that's moving out of the investigation side. Like, really, our thesis is SOC, security operations centers, should not be reduced to a triage function. We think that's a design mistake almost. I'm not blaming SOC analysts by any means. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is they don't have the right tooling, and what we have asked from SOCs is precisely to behave as a triage unit. And I think it's a mistake, because ultimately when you think about a SOC, these are the teams that are able to see what is missing in a server configuration, because they know that the server has been under attack, under heavy attack. They know that each time we receive the phishing case, this set of employees have clicked more easily than others. So maybe we should train them first. But the issue is, all we're asking for them is, hey, you need to triage fast and to tell us whether it's malicious or not, and then you move on to something else. So they very much have a firefighter mentality, which is good because it helps extinguish fires. But we do believe that there are many insights that the SOC can derive for the rest of the organization. And so that's really what we're trying to bring to the table. An AI that not only is able to investigate, remediate, etc., but also is able to heal your organization over time, to detect what went missing, what went wrong, and to correct it over time. And I do think that if we're able to make that switch, and we're actively working on that, if we're able to make that switch, then clearly our impact will be much bigger than just making the SOC faster. It will actually help balance the field, as we said, between attackers and defenders. And really all we are dreaming about is making the attackers' life a little bit harder, because it's been probably too easy for now.
Réza, in your IC meeting, I'm sure you underwrote this 3-year scenario, 5-year, 10-year scenario as well. What did it look like? Why? What is it that underpins your underwriting of this 30 million round?
The team. I think for me, at this stage, the most important thing is the team and how they've executed to date, and how I believe they'll be able to continue executing. I'm not a big fan of massive projection spreadsheets, because ultimately you can put whatever you want in them, and I don't tend to believe them. But I think that this team has shown that they can execute, and they've shown their hunger for building a true product, a true approach to the market, and a true company. And that's what we're excited about. They've never promised the moon and the stars, but they've been executing step by step. And I think they're the right folks to go and make the most of this market.
Beautiful. Now, let me ask both of you, if someone's listening to this episode that's not a CISO, but a CTO or a founder, and they know that they probably still have a security problem they haven't yet dealt with, what's the one thing that you think they need to understand about the current moment and what AI will do to the market?
They just need to run and call Ahmed. That's the only thing they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I'm more than happy to help if I can, like talking to other founders that are about to start their journey. By the way, and I don't know whether that's exactly what you meant with the question, but if there are any founders that are about to start their journey, and please do reach out. I mean, obviously, always great to speak with other founders. One of the important aspects is motivation and energy over the long run. It's not easy. And that's my big piece of advice, if I can give one. It's not easy, but just it's so damn exciting. So obviously, the more you can speak about it, the more you can learn from other founders going through similar things, the easier it gets. And also for Europe, it means that we will be able to build a large cohort of dreamers. Some of us will be able to make impact. Like ultimately, it's a numbers game, as Réza said earlier. But then, if we're talking more through the lens of pure security, obviously we'd be more than happy to help. The first thing that anyone really needs to understand is that security is now a concern to everyone. Because up until now, if you were building a startup that is not from the security space, you would typically not worry about security before probably a few years. You would worry about scaling the business, etc., etc. But now, because the bar is actually so low from an economic perspective, like it's fairly easy to attack virtually any organization that you want. We are ourselves, for example, targets of phishing attacks, like a lot of phishing cases. By the way, we use our own product against that. Like we have our own SOC, which is literally Qevlar, dealing with our own alerts because we have an EDR internally. We have all the tooling that is needed. So my point is, my main message to them is, security may not be your first concern from day one, because obviously it will be running your business, making sure that you get these early customers, etc., etc. But at least try to bake it into the product so that when it becomes a real thing, you won't have stupid, silly mistakes to undo, and you have something straightforward from day one. And security basically should be embedded by design in organizations, should be embedded by designs in products, because again, some of these startups will turn out, I hope, to be unicorns, to be the next champions. The sooner they think about security, the best it will be for them.
Yeah, I think if I can add to that, security can no longer be an afterthought.
Exactly.
I think a lot of times in the past, people would go build something and then say, oh, let me think about the security piece. I think right now it's one of those components that you have to take into account from the get-go, because the later you try to address it, the more stuff you will have to fix. And so I think it's in your interest and benefit to think about it up front.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Réza, for coming on the podcast to talk about this very important topic. I think it's very, very clear. We're all talking about the Mythos moment and everything over the past couple of weeks. And I have a feeling that it's not something that's going to go away. Ahmed, Réza, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.